Today we are just quickly going to be going over persuasive speaking just to kind of like help you get an idea of what your persuasive speech is going to be like. But first of all, I wanted to go over the rubric for your informative speech to let you know how I will be grading you for this speech. Just a quick reminder, your informative speech and outline, it is due tonight at 11:59 p.m. Make sure to submit it on time so that you don't get docked off any points. So your speech is going to be filmed on Flipgrid just the same way as your anecdotal speech. Your speech is a little bit longer this time around, is between 4 to 5 minutes. Our previous speech was between 3 to 4. This one is between 4 to 5. So make sure that you prepare enough material to meet the minimum amount of time, which is 4 minutes, and make sure that you don't go over more than 30 seconds or more than 30 seconds over the time. So if you are at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, you're still considered fine and you won't be docked off any more points. But after those 30 seconds that I gave you as a grace period, you will be docked off points. So make sure that you time yourself, rehearse in front of somebody else, so that you can do it in a timely manner. So I just wanted to remind you that your outline in your speech on Flipgrid is due tonight at 11:59 p.m. So make sure that you submit that. And also, again, we're getting closer. We're getting to the end of our session. Next week, we begin week 7, which is our second to last week of the session. Make sure that you are submitting all of your work on time. If you have any concerns about your work, or if something that you submitted has not been graded, or if you're having any issues, just let me know that I will be more than happy to work with you to help you achieve success in this class. So really quickly, let's go over the rubrics to let you know what I will be grading and what I will be looking at as I am grading your speeches this week and next week. So let's quickly go over what I will be looking at. So I'm going to take you to the rubric section of our speeches. So let me show you what exactly I'm going to be grading you on. So if you look, your rubric should be attached to your assignment. It should be able to be visible to you all, but if you are not able to see it, or if you're curious as to how I'll be grading, I'll be going over this right now. So let's check out the delivery first. The delivery is your video, so your video presentation on Flipgrid. These are the categories that we'll be looking at when I am grading your speech. So the first thing that I'm going to be looking at is your introduction, making sure that you have a proper attention grabber. Again, if you are curious as to what an attention grabber is, make sure to go back to, I believe, week 2, which is where we talked about attention grabbers, week 2 or week 3. Go back to that PowerPoint, go back to that lecture, check out what are some of the attention grabbers that you are able to use. So go back to that. You need to also have a specific purpose, meaning us letting us know the topic of your speech. For this speech, you are required to have a credibility statement, meaning that you're supposed to have a sentence within your speech that lets us know why you're qualified to talk about this topic. Finally, you need to have a preview of main points, basically letting us know how like the points that you're going to be discussing in your speech and the order that they come in. It's really important that you do it in the order that you're going to be discussing them. That way you set a structure for the audience. So that's what I'm going to be looking at the introduction. It is worth 12 points in total. If you meet some of the criteria, you will get half credit. If you don't meet the criteria required, you will get a 0. The next thing that I'm looking at are body paragraphs. So I'm going to make sure that you have body paragraphs, that you have transitions in between the body paragraphs. Again, if you have questions about what your body paragraph should contain, what your transition should look like, go back to that lecture in which I talk about outlining, and that will help you refresh your memory. So for that, you are meant to have, like a couple main points, make sure that you transition between each of the main points. For this speech, like I talked about last week, one of the things that you are required to have that you haven't been required to have in previous speeches are 2 oral citations. So 2 citations, you are required to have a minimum of 2 sources in the speech. So you are required to cite those sources as you are giving your speech. So the same way that you would cite a source in an essay is the same way that you would cite it in a speech. So you would say something like, according to, as stated by, ... Not stating the source and just kind of like reading the quote does not count as an oral citation. That counts as a citation in your outline, but not as an oral citation. So make sure that you are doing an oral citation. If you have any questions as to what that looked like, send me your outline. I'll be more than happy to look it over for you and let you know if it's an appropriate oral citation. That's out of 18 points. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is the conclusion. Make sure that you review your specific purpose, review the points that you discuss, and that you end with a statement that leaves a lasting impression. Again, any of the statements that you can use as a closing statement are the same ones that you use as an attention grabber. So if you're using a quote for an attention grabber, you can use a question for the closing statement. Again, highly encourage you to look back at the lecture when it comes to outlining if you have any questions in regards to that. Finally, the last thing that I'm going to be grading is delivery. So I'm going to be looking at like how well you make eye contact with your camera, that you use flashcards and you're not reading from your outline, that you use your gestures, that you use space effectively. I know that filming your speech is not the same way as if you, it's not the same thing as if you were delivering it face-to-face in class, but just try to like use the space as much as you can, move your gestures. That gives us the idea that you are using your space, make eye contact, make sure that you meet the minimum time limit and that you don't go over 30 seconds over the time limit. And also that you rehearse your speech well enough to avoid vocal fillers. Another thing that I want to just remind you of is make sure that your volume is appropriate for the speech. I've had classes in which like the student films a speech and it's really, really hard for me to hear it, even if I put the volume up really high on my computer. So make sure that you are, you know, speaking at a good volume, that you are able to hear yourself when you watch the video over again. That will make it much easier for me to grade, and I could actually give you the credit that you deserve if I'm able to hear everything. So that's out of 25 points. In total, your delivery or your video presentation on Flipgrid is worth 67 points. So it's a good substantial amount. Consider it's kind of like double of what we did last time. So that's what your delivery is, how your delivery is going to be graded. Now let's look back at the outline. The outline rubric is pretty standard for most of the speeches. It's just going to vary in points and it's just going to change a little bit depending on what the requirements are. So for the format, I'm requiring, like, you know, the Roman numeral format. Again, if you are curious as to what that looks like, you can go back to the outline lecture in which it'll give you a sample of the Roman numeral format for the outline. So go back and look at that over. Make sure that your speech sections are labeled, that you have your general and specific purpose in your outline, then you have a really creative title. Also, make sure to look back and look at the comments that I made on your previous outline for your anecdotal speech so that you can get an idea of like what are some parts that you're doing well, keep on doing the same thing, and if there's something that you need to change or I gave you feedback on, make sure to apply it to this upcoming outline. That's worth 20 points. And then the second part that I'm going to be grading are sources. So making sure that you have a separate works cited page, that it is in MLA format, that it has in-text citations. Remember that you are required to have 2 sources. Not only are you required to have 2 sources in your outline to support your speech, you are required to have that 2 oral citations. So make sure that you do have at least those 2 sources. If you need more than 2 sources, you're more than welcome to look to add more to it, but I'm only looking for 2 sources for oral citations and for your outline. So you can decide whether you need more or not to meet the time limits. So that's basically how I'm going to be grading your speeches. If you have any more, if you have any questions as to how I'm grading or what are some things that you know, you want to know how to improve on in the future, just let me know, shoot me an email, and I will be more than happy to answer those questions for you. So for today, we are going to be talking about persuasive speaking. I know that we are barely getting done with our informative speech unit, but this class is a, you know, fast-paced class, so we're moving really quickly. So I wanted to introduce you to persuasive speaking before we actually get to next week, in which you'll be actually covering the material. So I wanted to give you a preview of what I'm going to be talking about so that you can get an idea of what topics will work well for your following speech. So let's talk about persuasive speaking. So when we're talking about persuasive speaking, it is really important for us to understand what persuasion is, what is required for us, what are we supposed to be doing, and how to craft our speech in a way that it is effective. So the first thing that I wanted to cover is what is persuasion. So when we talk about persuasion, we are covering this definition. So we are trying to, we're making the effort or the deliberate attempt to change or reinforce somebody's attitudes, beliefs, and values. Now, this definition might seem simple, but it's actually kind of dense. So for your persuasive speech, you're not only to trying to change somebody's mind about a topic, but you also might be wanting to convince that person that the way that they think is already good enough and not to change it. So you're not only trying to change somebody's mind, but you might be saying, hey, the way that you're thinking works, just keep on thinking that way. And when we talk about a deliberate attempt, that means that you're actually putting effort into it. That means that it's on purpose, and that's the way that you are doing it. So another thing that I want to highlight and that a lot of people think about when it comes to persuasion is that they think that automatically something that is persuasive is manipulative. Now, persuasion does get a bad reputation. People often think that when we are trying to persuade someone else, we're trying to manipulate them. However, persuasion, its intent is not to be manipulative. It is to convince people to change or to reinforce their attitudes, beliefs, and values. So if you do it in a way that it is to help your audience, to get them to understand the topic better, to get them to do something that is helpful for them, not only for yourself, then you're not being manipulative, you're being persuasive. So I just wanted to highlight that persuasive speaking is it's not about manipulation, it is about convincing somebody. So that's that. Persuasion is about advocacy. So when you think about an advocate, we usually think about an attorney or somebody that is fighting for a specific cause. That's exactly what you will be doing for your persuasive speech. You will be fighting for a specific stance, idea that you hold, and you will be trying to let the audience know why that is useful to them as well. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about quickly are the ideas of attitudes, beliefs, and values. So these are things that you often are trying to change when it comes to persuasive speaking. You're usually trying to change an attitude, a belief, or a value. So when we talk about an attitude, we're talking about how somebody, like, their predisposition or how somebody feels about a particular topic, whether they feel positively or negative about an idea or topic. So for example, my example for attitudes is like, when I was younger, I used to absolutely hate exercising, and my mental predisposition to exercising was negative. Every time that we had to do a lot of exercising, like, the mile run when you were in high school, it was something that I hated. But now as an adult, my mental predisposition to exercising has changed. Now I think of it in a positive way and I actually enjoy it. So your attitudes are really easy to change, so it can change from negative to possibly really positively in an easier way. So out of all of these three areas, the attitudes are the easiest one to change. So if you are trying to instill or change an attitude in your audience, these are the easiest things to persuade an audience. The next thing are beliefs. Beliefs is when we think of something as being true or not true. Now, beliefs are the hardest things that we can change. Most of us are born into our family, into our community, and they instill certain truths to us about the world that we live in. So when we talk about a belief, for example, it could be about, think about the Flat Earth Society. We have the community of flat earthers who are trying to persuade the rest of the world that the earth is flat. Now, we have been instilled by, society, by education, by all of these people that actually, like, the earth is round, it's not really flat. So for them to come in and shake up that entire system, that entire worldview that we have, it's really, really difficult and almost impossible to make somebody shift their belief system into something completely different and unknown by them. So if you are trying to convince somebody about whether something is true or not true, like the existence of aliens, or if you're trying to convince them about the earth being flat, or like if you're trying to persuade someone to believe in God or not to believe in God, those are things that are highly impossible to believe in. And then, so again, like one of the things that I have here, like, why is it hard to believe in the Flat Earth Society? And like I was mentioning 2 seconds ago, it's really hard to believe in them because our worldview or system, the way that we look at the world, has been shaped in a way to think that the earth is round. And I mean, there was a time, the time of Galileo, the type of the medieval times, there was a time when people did believe that the earth was flat. And that took a lot of, years and years and years and scientific discoveries to switch that around. So again, it takes a really long time to persuade somebody to change their beliefs. Next thing that I'm going to talk about values, and values is the middle ground of attitudes and beliefs. So beliefs are the hardest to change. Attitudes are the easiest to change, and values are right in the middle. So a value is what we consider to be good or bad. So, as we get closer to like 4th of July, we start thinking about like, what are some values that Americans hold dear? We have things like, liberty, freedom, like just like freedom, liberty. We value that. We also value people being independent, people being brave, right? Like we value all of these things. And, you know, those are things that we consider like to be good things or bad things. So another example that I do use to show values is like, do you think that, you know, you think online dating is a good or a bad thing? You know, depending on your value system, depending on the way that you look at the world, you will change the way that you feel about that because of how your experiences you've had, because of the way that you've been raised. It will change that. So one of the things that I want to encourage you on when you are choosing a topic for your persuasive speech, or when you are actually developing your speech, is just think about the attitudes, beliefs, and values that your audience might have. So if you're trying to persuade your audience to, you know, exercise 5 times a day, or to like eat vegan, or, you know, buy from local grocery stuff markets, or like from markets rather than grocery stores. Think about the values that are like, what are things that they believe in, what are things that they think are good or bad, what are some things that they have a negative and positive attitude towards. Think about all of these things, and then you should be able to craft a message that could be heard even by audiences that completely disagree with you. That's the value of looking at attitudes, beliefs, and values. Next thing that I wanted to talk about are the goals and purposes of persuasive speaking. So these are the things that you as a persuasive speaker are trying to do, or are seeking to do. First, you're trying to reinforce a position. Like I said at the beginning when we talked about the definition, you're trying to get people to keep their idea, the idea that they have, keep that opinion that they have. You're trying to say, yes, good job, keep doing what you're doing. The next thing is that you're trying to get them to shift the position. So if somebody is not on your side, you're trying to get them to completely shift the way that they think to the way that you want them to think. Or you want them to adopt a behavior. So if you're trying to convince your audience to, you know, shop at farmers markets rather than a big chain grocery stores, you're trying to get them to adopt a behavior. You're also trying to get them to eliminate a behavior. I've also had speeches in which students are trying to persuade others to like eliminate eating meat, or eliminate drinking alcohol or drinking coffee, right? That will be an example of eliminating behavior. So basically, the whole goal and purpose of a persuasive speech, besides reinforcing, shifting, adopting, and eliminating a behavior, you're trying to get the audience to come in, to leave your speech having some thinking differently about the topic. So for example, if I already believe, let's say for example, that the earth is flat, and you're delivering about a speech about the earth being flat, you want me to say, hey, now I'm like even more convinced that the earth is flat because so and so brought this like incredible argument to show that the earth is flat. So now I know something new, and I for sure believe that the earth is flat. So even though I didn't completely shift my position, I changed the way that I feel about it because I feel even more strongly due to the evidence that was provided. So there are different categories to persuasive speeches. In this class, we will be focusing on a persuasive speeches policy, which is the ones, and they're different from the ones that I'm going to discuss below. So let me discuss them, and then I'll dive in a little bit deeper into persuasive speech of policy so that you can get an understanding of what is expected of you. So, so we have the first proposition, the first persuasive speech category is called a proposition of fact. In a proposition of fact, you're trying to convince someone that something does or does not exist, that something is real or not. So again, proposition of fact speech would be trying to convince the audience that, you know, that aliens exist. And you would use factual evidence, scientific evidence, documented evidence to present that this is something that exists, right? So that would be an example of a propositional fact. A proposition of fact is also propositions that are examined in criminal cases. So when we are watching documentaries like The Night Stalker, Ted Bundy, Son of Sam on Netflix, they're gathering evidence to prove whether that crime was committed by that person, right? So that would be an example of a proposition of fact. The next thing is a proposition of value. When we talk about a proposition of value, we, again, kind of like what we talked about our values, we're assessing the worth of a statement. And this speech is a little bit harder than a proposition of fact, just because you actually have to define all the words that are in your proposition. So if you're saying that something is good or something is bad or something is better or worse, You have to define what your standard for better or worse is, what you mean by those words. You have to be very clear when you are defining these words. So for example, let's say that, like we think about, there was like a whole argument a few years back about assisted suicide, whether assisted suicide was something that should be allowed, if it's something that is if people should have the right to do that. So if you were to write a speech about that, or if you were to try to persuade someone in regards to this topic, you would have to define what assisted suicides means, what means to be too ill, what means to have the right of something. So you will have to define all of these things, right? Before you even dive into the proof and the evidence that you're going to give to us, you have to define your claim really well. So that's why the proposition of fact and the proposition of value are two that we're not going to be doing in this class, just because it's really hard. It requires a lot of work. So the one that we're going to be focusing on is the proposition of policy. Now, then once this one is, it's still difficult to convince somebody of a proposition of policy, but it is easier to organize, and it can be done within the time frame that we have in this class. So a proposition of policy, basically, you are persuading the audience to take an action to solve a problem. And you have to show that your solution or your stance on that problem is true. So for example, if you look at this, one of the problems that we have seen, in the past few years is the usage of straws, and how straws definitely do cause a lot of problems to marine animals and to our, the health of our oceans and pollution and all of that. So that's a big problem that we're dealing with, right? So you can talk about the problem of pollution in the oceans, how is it harming the animals and how is it harming us, and then you will be offering us a solution, kind of like what they're doing at different restaurants, you have to request a straw, or you can say that we have to bring our own straws, or whatever it is that you feel is the right solution for the problem. So this is the speech that we're going to be doing in this class. So next week you'll be diving in a little bit deeper into persuasive speaking. You will be talking about the different again, you'll be reviewing the different propositions. You'll be talking a little bit more deep about propositions of policy. And again, these are a little bit easier to organize as opposed to your other propositions, just because you just have to hit the problem, what causes the problems, and the solution, and it can be researched in a more timely manner. The last thing that I wanted to talk about today is the organization pattern that you're going to be using for this speech. So in the past couple of speeches, the informative and the anecdotal, you have used kind of like the same pattern of speeches. So you have the freedom to choose your main points. For your speeches of policy, for persuasive speeches of policy, you are actually going to have to follow a different pattern. I will be uploading a template for you to fill in when you are crafting this speech. But basically, your pattern follows this order. It has 3 main points. So your introduction and your conclusion will remain the same. You will still have transitions. You'll still have a general and specific purpose. Same thing that your other outlines have had. The only thing that's going to change is that for this speech, you're actually going to have 3 main points that are already assigned for you and selected for you. So your first main point is, so after you complete your introduction and you have your first transitional sentence, your first main point is going to be the problem. And in that main point, you're going to be talking about what is the crisis that you're addressing? Why should we address it? Why is it important? You're going to be providing, sources to back that up. The second main point that you'll have is what's called the causes. In that main point, you will be telling us, what are some of the reasons that the problem got so bad to begin with. So again, if I bring you back to what we were talking about in the previous slide, the use of straws and the pollution that it has caused, obviously some of the areas that we're going to be discussing in the problem is, there was a viral video with a turtle who had poor turtle who had a straw stuck to their nose. So we can talk about how it's harming animals, how it's causing them death, also the pollution in the ocean, the quality of water, and we're going to be talking about that as the problem. So what has brought the problem about? So why are we having this problem for straws? One, because restaurants were giving out straws freely. Two, because as soon as we use the straw, like we throw it away, and we don't do it in a way that is good for recycling. um Again, those are a couple of causes that have brought the problem about. Also, another cause could be that straws are also made out of plastic, and plastic, that particular plastic takes a while to, like, not even, like, not only it doesn't take a long time to even like start disintegrating, but if it ever disintegrates, right? So that could be another way that we can talk about causes of the problem. Then at the very end, after you talked about the problem, what it is, the severity of it, what brought that problem about, you're going to be hitting the solution. So the solution that you feel is the best one for that particular problem. So in that solution, you are going to be telling us how you think we should solve it. And again, any of the solutions that you propose can be a solution that has already been proposed or outside already by either like a government entity or foundation or anything like that. You will be offering a solution, or you can create your own solution. Again, you will need sources to help you back this up, but you can find sources of similar solutions that have been done in different places or that have been talked about, or similar solutions that have been put into place for other problems, maybe plastic bags. Something similar that worked for plastic bags maybe can work for straws, right? So you are going to be telling us what your solution would be, how that solution will be implemented, why would it work better than others, and you're going to be doing that. Again, this is going to be in that outline template that I will be posting online, so it will be really easy for you to follow and fill in the blanks as you go. So basically, this is what I wanted to talk to you all about today. I wanted to give you a quick introduction to persuasive speeches. And I also wanted to give you an idea of how I'll be grading your informative speeches. Again, I want to remind you all that we only have 2 weeks left in the session, which is really, like, really, really, really incredible that it has gone by so fast. So we have 2 weeks left in our session. So make sure that you have submitted all your work, that you continue doing the great work that you're doing, so that at the end of the semester you get the grade that you have worked so hard for. So submit your work tonight. Please submit your speech. Please submit your outline. Let me know if there's anything that you need. And with that being said, you are free to go. Hopefully you enjoy this really long weekend, and I hope that you have a great week next week. Let me know if you need anything. Do not forget to submit your speech and your outline tonight. I will see you next week.